Hey everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Review 705. Today we're going to talk about Praga, and the full name is Praga Caput Regni. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that. I think that means capital of the region, but I'll just call it Praga, and basically means Prague. And so this is from designer Vladimir Suchy, who's done a few games that I've really enjoyed, Underwater Cities, Last Will, 20th Century, I'm sure some others. And this is a 1 to 4 player Euro game with a lot of really interesting mechanics, and one of a little bit of a spoiler for the review. I don't know how to say this even. It goes beyond, but we'll get to more of that in the review. But one of the coolest boards, plural, that I've ever seen in any kind of game, Euro or otherwise. So let's jump in and talk about a little bit how it works, and I'll come back and tell you my thoughts. So Praga has a kind of a standard European theme. There's a monarch who has sort of commissioned different buildings and works and everything throughout the city, and the players are all sort of wealthy patrons trying to kind of get the favor of the king and, you know, build cool buildings and build the road and the bridge and the palace and the cathedral and all that stuff. Now here you can see the board, which from afar looks like an absolute nightmare, but let me tell you, it is anything but. Let's just zoom in a little bit on the board here. So there's a lot of just fine details and everything kind of woven into the art and the different places here, and just kind of zoomed in here a little bit to show you kind of a little bit of the burgeoning city here. But it really is a pleasure to look at, and it is parsable. It is easy to digest. There's a little bit of a learning curve with this game, I won't lie, but I think once you kind of get through that, there's a lot to kind of learn in terms of the strategy and kind of the fun that can be had. So a couple of sort of highlights of the components. Here you can see in the corner of the board kind of this main sort of action selection thing. We'll talk more about this in a minute, but it's very, very easy to kind of parse this out. And this acts as kind of a round timer, and it kind of acts as a kind of a roll selection kind of thing, but it all works very, very succinctly and elegantly. And there is a little bit of a three-dimensionality to this game. Here you can see kind of a bridge. So players will be kind of like working down this road, sort of building up a road, building buildings along it, and then they get to this bridge, which funnily enough has a bunch of eggs in it, which they used kind of as the mortar in a way. And this is where players will be placing bonus tiles and moving their figures. And then there's also a wall and a cathedral here that players will be moving their cubes up and down, left and right on, to sort of get special little abilities and stuff like that. Now these three-dimensional pieces here, you don't have to use these here because they will kind of hide the scoreboard around the back. This is also printed on the board itself. I don't know, I like playing with it. It just adds a cool feel to the game. And then each player is going to get 2 boards. Now the board on the left is almost like a cheat sheet in a way. They show you the different actions that you can do. There's 6 different actions in the game, but you can also upgrade those actions. So you'll put upgrade tiles right on top of them. But this is really just kind of a reminder board. Now this here I would call your main player board, and it has little dials here to track the amount of gold on the left and ore on the right, as well as underneath there kind of your mines where you're extracting the ore and the gold from. And then on the right you have some tracks, which are sort of like knowledge tracks, education tracks that you can go to kind of unlock special abilities and in-game scorings. So on your turn, what you're going to do is you're going to select one of these tiles here from this main kind of action wheel, and you're going to pick that tile, and you're going to do one of the 2 actions on there. Each of these tiles has 2 actions. So in this case you could either go to your quarry and then mine ore or upgrade your quarry, or you could build a building. So you pick a tile, but then you only choose one of the actions on the tile. And the other thing you can do when you pick the tile is if you look at the space where you took the tile from, in this space here, which we can zoom in on, is you can actually just get an ore. So there's other abilities and things like that based on where these tiles are sitting on this wheel. You can get little bonuses that you can use at some point on your turn. And right here we can see the 3 tiles. Now there's 2 of each of these scattered throughout the board, but if we flip these tiles over, there's actually kind of sort of like an advanced game where the action spaces are sort of mixed up a little bit more. So let's go back to our main board, which I said again is kind of like a cheat sheet here. We're going to look at this action here. This is an upgrade action, and this is where you can actually upgrade the other actions that you can choose. So here on the board you can see there's 4 sort of upgrade tiles, and you're going to take one of these tiles and then place it on your little action board. So we'll take here, we're going to upgrade this bridge action, and we'll just put that tile on top there. And this is going to do a few things. It's going to help us later when we take this action. We can actually sell ore for $2 at the same time that we take the action. It's also going to bump us up on the university track. You can see there with the little hat there on the right hand side. But let's talk about what this road action does. Well, every player is going to have a little pawn here off to the side of the board. When you take that action, they're going to move down the road into their little spot in that section. And this is the first section here. And this can be randomized. You can see there's kind of like a token on here. But there's basically two actions you can do as you move down the road. The action on the left here is I can trade an egg in to upgrade either my quarry or my gold mine. And then I can get a white window or silver window and an ore or silver window and a gold. So as you move down the road, there's always an action that will cost you an egg and then some other action which is kind of like free. And like I said, there's a lot of tokens and things like in this game that you can put in all these spaces. You can change what the bridge does, what the cathedral does, what the wall does, what the road does. You can kind of mix all that up. So you don't get in kind of a rut, just kind of doing the same strategy over and over again, because that actions, that was so key to your strategy is now gone. Or the way that the cathedral is sort of configured is like, well, I can't really do that path, so that's not going to be as easy to do this time. So there's a lot of sort of variability that goes into this game. Now, one thing though to remember about the road as you move down it, there's always that egg option and then plus kind of the free option, so to speak. But once you get to the end of the road and hit the bridge, then you're going to have an egg, because like I said, the egg was kind of mixed into the mortar of the bridge. So there's a couple of sort of steps at the end of that action that you need an egg for. But eggs are always so worth points at the end of the game. And here you can see the bridge, and there's some bonus tiles which you actually will take and cover up different sort of planks on this bridge, and you'll get bonuses from the tile that you use, as well as the spaces that you cover up will give you little tokens and points and things. And the next two spaces I want to talk about are very similar. So here is kind of the quarry upgrade sort of collect action, and then also the gold mine upgrade / collect action. So if you just do collect, for example, if we did collect from the quarry, which is the top row, you can see there's 1, 2, and then the markers on the 3. You collect the number from the left. So in this case, I would get 2 ore. So I'd upgrade my ore from 2 to 4. But the other option, instead of collecting, is I can actually upgrade it. In that case, when you upgrade it, you move it to the right. And then if you're taking the action here from your board, you actually also just get 1 free ore out of it. So I'll move it to the right and then get 1 ore, which will then unlock other things that I can get later when I do a full collect action. And the gold mine works the same. Now, one thing to note is as you get more and more ore and gold, you'll see there's a little cube that actually gets in the way and blocks your little wheel here. And once you sort of pass or go to collect 6, either gold or ore, you actually will unlock a spot on your knowledge track or your tech track. And that's what this little book symbolizes. Anytime you see a book like that, you're going to then move up the tech track. And this is something you don't want to ignore for sure. So you'll move up there, and then you can see as you move up, you start to unlock these books. So we just unlocked the level 1 book. And so we're going to draw 3 tiles out of that stack. And as you go up, you're going to get a better and better tech. And then you're going to choose one of these. So this will give you like a bonus action or bonus ability or something like that over the course of the game as you go on and on. So you definitely don't want to ignore these. And then as you go up to the higher to the level 3 and level 4, those will be big, kind of big free actions or bonuses that'll be good at the end of the game. And before we get to the next action, I just want to pause and say these sort of like interactions of actions is really where you're going to get your big points out of. So when I build a building and do this, and I can move up a level on the book track, which will give me this thing, which I can then do that action, which will give me a window when I can move up the cathedral, so you can do. The beginning of the game is like, oh, do this, do it, and then, but by the end of the game, you're doing big old turns, and it's just, eating up everybody else's time, and they're waiting for you. Are you done scoring points yet? So that's kind of how it works. Next, we're going to talk about quickly here the building action, which is the little red space, as well as down here. This is sort of upgrading the wall. So when you build a building, you might get other bonuses and things. You can see the cost here is 3 gold. It'll give you a bonus bump on the quarry track. But specifically, I wanted to show this part here. In the wall sections, kind of do a similar thing, where if you build the building, you'll put it out in a space, and then you always put it around these pavilion spots. And this is sort of like an area control. So you can see here's a little space for a cube that you have, which is another reason why you want to unlock cubes off your board, is you'll put it on there, and then you'll start to sort of control that pavilion. And then whoever scores has the most of their cubes around certain pavilions will get big bonuses as well once they're surrounded. And then similarly, the walls you actually will add around your action board, and they'll give you points and things, but you can see here you might want to try to marry up the different tiles. In this case, this would give you 2 of these silver windows, And these silver windows, again, are good for moving along the wall. And the other thing to notice here is if you look at this particular wall piece here, it has the little blue icon at the top. And if we go back to the building that we bought earlier, this one has kind of the red cathedral icon. Now, not all of the buildings and wall pieces have this, but when you do that, you're going to move left and right on those big giant 3D tracks that I showed you. And if we go back here to the two silver windows, those will actually allow you to go up the tracks. So here we can look at the cathedral here. You can see the purple cube on the left. Again, you can see if you spend two silver windows, you go up. If you get the little red cathedral icon, you're going to move right, and vice versa on the wall track. And this is going to give you lots of endgame points and then give you bonus points for collecting different tokens and all that kind of stuff. And so over the course of the game, when you build those walls and buildings, they're going to give you the opposite token what you need for the other piece, either the cathedral or the wall. Okay, so that's a very, very brief, maybe too succinct overview of how to play the game. The game's very simple. Like I said, you take the action selection thing, you do whatever the action is, get some of the bonuses out of there, build or generate whatever you're going to do, and then possibly take any bonuses. So let's get to kind of my three pillars of reviews, and I'll kind of circle back into what makes this game really outstanding. Spoiler. So playtime and player count. What's the playtime say? The playtime says 45 to 150 minutes. So 45 minutes, yeah. So maybe in a single player game, you could be 45 minutes, although I've played it and it's probably been less than that, but I've played it a lot single player. And then just over 2 hours, 2.5 hours, probably for a 4-player game, and I can see that. Now I have played this at all player counts except for 4, 1, 2, 3, and not 4. And my multiplayer games have been on through Tabletop Simulator. They actually have an official mod there. And so I like it at all the player counts. I will say I like it with players more than solo, although this is really a fun solo game, and I'm kind of getting away from my pillars of review here, but I think I'm going to just jump off the shark because this game doesn't really remind me of a lot of things. It does a lot of the similar Euro stuff where you have like exploding actions and then just, kind of almost like infinitely or ever increasing exponential turns as you go along. Your first turn, you're like, oh, well, I moved up the track 1 space, blah. Okay, I got a gold piece. Yay. At the beginning of the game. But then at the end of the game, you're doing all this crazy stuff. And that clock is really ticking. That wheel that you have, it's cool because it's like resetting all the rolls and the actions and things like that and kind of randomizing the bonuses that you get, which is really neat. But then it's also this like doom clock of like, how am I going to get a lot of points by the end of this game? Because no matter how many players are playing the game, either 1, 2, 3, 4, the way that wheel sets up and the way you kind of line it up at the start of the game, no matter what, you're going to get 16 turns every game. And so you have 16 turns to try to get your engine or whatnot to the point of, let's call it the point of no return, where you start to spiral into a lot of points. And that's what you're trying to achieve here. Now, I will say, I think this will probably sum up my review best, would be, I think if the board and the art and everything was not as cool and just tactile and delicious looking and so detailed in its illustration and all that stuff, I don't think this game would be that neat. Like, it would be a pretty good, decent game, but I would be like, well, this is like, every other Euro comes out, like, not that big a deal. But because of like just the pure presence of the board and the tactileness of it and just the gorgeous illustrations, this game is awesome. Like, I've just been addicted to this game the last couple of weeks. I've played this, I don't know how many times solo. Like, one night I played it like 3 or 4 times in a row solo. Now there is 2 solo modes. There's sort of one that comes in the box. It's okay, it's fine. It's actually a good way to kind of learn the game. But I would say that if you go to the website deliciousgames.org, now this is being published by Rio Grande and kind of Delicious Games, but if you're in the States here, you get it through Rio Grande. But the main design team with Vladimir Succi and those folks is Delicious Games. If you go to deliciousgames.org, you can download and print out like 5 cards and then like a little 2-page rule set for a little bit more of like an AI type of thing for a solo mode. And I would say definitely recommend that to play. It's much better. It's just 5 little cards to print out, and I printed them out and stuff. Now they do have those cars and things in the official Tabletop Simulator mod, so if you want to play with it in there, and that mod is really cool. It works really well, surprisingly, with all this like wheel stuff and everything. Like, it works good. But yeah, but I've been addicted to this. Really addicted to it, and a couple folks in my group have got it as well. And we've physical copies, but we haven't been played physically together, and had a chance to go through it on Tabletop Simulator, and it's really neat. Like, there's a lot of just cool crunchiness here, and it has the thing about it, which I think is going to turn some people off. But like I said, because of just the level of production and design, I really like it. Where it has this stuff that's like, certain actions you do are just constantly like pulling you from one strategy to another. And I kind of summed that up at the end of the walkthrough, where like if you build the buildings, they give you the blue tokens, which are going to score as bonuses on the wall. When you build the wall, it's going to give you the red tokens, which is going to score on the cathedral. So they're scoring separately, they're going against each other, which is like, why? Like your brain's like, what? That doesn't make sense. Other than it just, an interesting mechanical choice. But there's like, the whole game is like that, where you're like, okay, if I get the windows, that's going to shoot me up. That's a lot of bonus points. But if I get the gold windows, I can get another turn. But then I don't do what I spent time to get that, and then that's just giving me another turn. So trying to like time sort of the action efficiency stuff, that's really what this game is. So it's a lot of like, a lot of these other games here last, 5, 7, 8 years, is this just action efficiency like stuff. And I was like, oh, I moved up the knowledge track. Okay, great. That's like an extra ×3 at the end of the game, But the way that this game does it is just presented in such a cool way that it just can't help but be fun to do and just sink your teeth into. And there is this like little nooks and crannies in here, like the whole egg thing. Like, oh, I got some eggs. Well, what are those used for? Let's help you move up the road, because they were used in the mortar, in the bridge, and the road. And it's like, that's kind of funny, So it is neat. Like, it's a smorgasbord of mechanisms, but the game itself like lives up to that. The production of the game lives up to that, and I think that's why it's so fun. Because if it was sort of like a bland, beigey looking thing like we've seen a lot of times with European games, it would just be another thing. Now, because of this is colorful, it's it's well detailed, it's tactile, because you're picking up this tile, you're spinning the wheel, you're building stuff around your action board, you've got your little dials on your player board for that, and then when you move the dial falling off, you're like, oh, you like kick a cube out, and then you take that cube, you're like, oh, that's a cube, now I can go use here to mark place on the board, and that moves me up the technology track, and I got to go open these books and read the books and be like, what's my strategy going to be, for the next little while? And that's the books. I put the book next to me, and so it has all of that cool, like, it's funny that their published name is Delicious Games, and I'm like, this game is delicious. Like, I want to eat little parts of it because of the way it's illustrated and everything, and the way that like I'm playing with it, fiddling it, and the toy factor part of it. Just really neat. And so the last thing I think I'll leave you with, trying to stay on the rails here, is the variability pieces, because like I said in the walkthrough, a lot of these things, like the different steps on the cathedral and the bridge, and the different pavilions and the little steps on the road, those are all like little components that you can just kind of shuffle up and everything. And I think the game would sort of wither if they hadn't invested that in here, because there is like a strategy you can get to where you're like, okay, well, you know what I'm gonna do? Every game I'm gonna play is I'm just gonna max out the cathedral on the wall. I'm gonna totally ignore buildings, really. I'm gonna ignore the kind of upgrades. I'm gonna ignore some of the other things. And so you can really kind of pick and go after different strategies. Although with other players, you can kind of get in each other's way a little bit. But because you can mix up and make it more variable, I think that's gonna keep it more interesting and fresh and everything. So yeah, it's just, to me, it's like, this is like a, it's a good, decent Euro, but then you look at the coat of paint they gave it, and it's like, this is awesome. I just want to keep playing this. All right, so anyway, that is Praga. I definitely recommend it if you're a fan of Euros. If you're not, I don't know that necessarily the art and everything would be enough to win you over, but I don't know, maybe. So anyway, I definitely recommend it for folks that are like, if you like Euros a little bit, I would recommend this 100%. Okay, thanks.